corresponding set of values that solves this inequality here. Okay, so there is a very common mistake that people will make, that is they will imagine that because they can do square rooting both sides for less than 0. A common mistake what students will do, I'm just going to write it in red so that you know that it's not the correct one. Okay, is that they will do this. They'll put x squared less than 4, and they'll put x less than plus minus square root 2. All right, so but when you do something like that, you can see that if you take x less than plus minus square root 2, and I ask you to represent this on a number line, it doesn't really seem to make sense. So some student may say that it's like x less than square root 2, or x less than minus square root 2, and you can see it again, this does not make sense, because you have minus square root 2 and 0 and square root 2, and you have x less than square root 2, x less than negative square root 2. Then I mean the intersection is just this portion, right? But if your final answer that you're going to present is x less than negative square root 2, since you see that's the intersection, then you can see that if I put x as 1, okay, but if you just take the counter example of letting x equals to 1, which does not fulfill this inequality, okay, so it also satisfies this inequality, but it's not found here. So your answer is incomplete. Now, why is that so? Now, a very, very simple idea is this. You see that, for example, right? If I just show you, okay, if I take, for example, the negative of 2 square, okay, you know that this is basically 4 lah, okay, negative 2 square will be less than a negative of 3 square, right? Okay, so if you see, okay, because this is basically the answer 4, and this is like the answer 9, so 4 is less than 9, that's true. But you can see if I square root both sides, right, I tell you that, oh, if I square root both sides, I have negative 2 less than negative 3. Now, does this make sense? Now, you can see that straight away there's something wrong here. Negative 2 is more than negative 3. If you were to draw the number line out, you can see that 0, minus 2, minus 3. You can see that, negative 2 is on the right of negative 3. And this straight away will tell you that there's something wrong. So square rooting both sides does not basically solve the inequality. You do not square root both sides. Okay, so never ever square root both sides. Never ever square root both sides when you are solving an inequality. Okay, when you are solving, you do not square root both sides. So how do we do this question then? You go back to the steps that I said. All right, you always make the right hand side 0, which is what I did here. All right, you ensure that the coefficient of x squared is positive, which in this question, does it fulfill? Yes. You find the x-intercept. So how do we find the x-intercept? Now, we cannot square root both sides. So what we do is we factorize it. Now, if you see this is a squared minus b squared, all right, it is like x squared minus 2 squared to be less than 0. So what you do is you just factorize it using the algebraic identity. This is a minus b and a plus b to be less than 0. Okay, so from here, then next up is when you find the x-intercepts. Now you can see that if you equate it to 0, imagine if you look at this graph, okay, basically the x-intercepts, right, if you equate to 0, the x-intercept is basically 2, negative 2 and 2. Okay, so last step, we sketch the curve, and with the x-axis, I have 2 and negative 2 as my x-intercepts. Now, where's the portion where it's negative? You can see that we are basically looking that, again, like what I said in my earlier videos, right? If you imagine that when you sketch this graph, y equals to x minus 2, x plus 2, all right? And again, you are looking at the portion where it's less than 0. You are basically trying to see or trying to find the corresponding x values for which your y equals to x minus x plus 2. When I say is less than 0, it means that is less than 0, or aka underneath the x-axis, under the x-axis, because we are talking about less than 0. Less than 0 meaning your y is less than 0, it means that your y has to be underneath the x-axis. So where is that? That will be this region over here. Okay, so these are the x values that will make your y negative. These are the corresponding x values. And what are these x values? You can see that x is between -2 and 2. We have a set, a united set here, and is not disjointed. You can see it's between 2, -2, and 2. Okay, so that is your final answer. We do not look at just the graph itself, but you must look at the corresponding x values. Okay, that makes your